There are moments in mobility design when a vehicle stops behaving like transportation and begins behaving like architecture in motion. And standing before this speculative motorhome, that transition feels deliberate rather than accidental. What we are examining here is not a production vehicle, nor a market-ready prototype, but a highly refined conceptual exploration of what ultra-luxury long-range habitation could become if freed from present-day regulatory and manufacturing constraints. It is an AI-generated design study, a thought experiment rendered with remarkable coherence, and I will approach it as I would a full-scale concept unveiled at a private design symposium. From a proportional standpoint, this motorhome appears to extend approximately 13 to 14 meters in overall length, with a height approaching 4.2 meters when measured to the apex of the upper glass canopy. The width, likely near 2.6 meters, is visually amplified by its horizontal glazing bands and the confident stance created by its triple-axle configuration. Immediately, the stance communicates mass control rather than mass excess. The forward overhang is restrained, suggesting careful consideration of weight distribution over the steer axle, while the tandem rear axles indicate a design engineered to manage substantial structural loads without compromising ride composure. This is not simply a large vehicle, it is a large object that has been disciplined aerodynamically. The wheelbase logic is particularly intriguing. The spacing between the front axle and first rear axle appears extended, likely to support a central structural core where primary living functions would be located. The second rear axle, positioned slightly aft and relatively close to the first, implies load balancing for an upper-level observation deck and extensive glass structures. From an engineering standpoint, distributing that vertical mass over two rear axles would significantly reduce frame torsion under dynamic load. Visually, the body language rejects the traditional box-based RV archetype. Instead of orthogonal panel intersections and abrupt rooflines, we see continuous curvature that appears digitally sculpted to manage airflow across multiple pressure zones. The nose section is particularly instructive. Rather than a flat vertical facade, the front fascia is deeply raked, transitioning from a low splitter into a broad, uninterrupted windshield that blends seamlessly into a blacked-out A-pillar structure. This creates a unified glass mask, almost marine in character, evoking high-speed yacht superstructures more than conventional motor coaches. The absence of a conventional grille reinforces the assumption of either a fully electric or hydrogen-electric hybrid propulsion architecture. Cooling apertures are minimized and integrated into lower intake channels that appear sculpted for laminar airflow management rather than aggressive thermal extraction. The front lighting identity is executed with restrained precision. A narrow DRL strip forms a sharp visual underline beneath the primary headlamp cluster, which itself is recessed into a sculpted housing that blends into the body rather than interrupting it. This hierarchical lighting strategy suggests an emphasis on night presence without visual noise. The lower splitter integrates subtle air curtains at the wheel edges, a detail that would reduce turbulence around the front tires, an essential consideration for a vehicle of this frontal surface area. As we move along the side profile, the design becomes increasingly architectural. The glass-to-body ratio is unusually high for a motorhome of this scale. The upper deck is almost entirely encased in panoramic glazing, while the main level features elongated horizontal windows that taper toward the rear. Structurally, this would require a reinforced exoskeletal frame, likely high-strength aluminum space frame combined with carbon composite crossmembers to preserve torsional rigidity. The challenge of such extensive glazing is not simply structural, but thermal. Large glass surfaces introduce solar gain concerns, especially during long-duration travel. In a real-world production scenario, this would necessitate electrochromic glass technology capable of dynamic tint modulation, paired with multi-layer insulation coatings to mitigate infrared penetration. The surface language across the flanks is particularly refined. Notice how the lower body sculpting forms a concave channel just ahead of the rear axles. This is not decorative indulgence, it likely serves as a controlled airflow corridor directing high-pressure air toward the rear diffuser zone. The panel transitions are seamless, suggesting hidden seam integration and possibly bonded composite panels rather than traditional riveted aluminum sheets common in current RV construction. The paint finish appears to be a multi-layer metallic silver with subtle warm undertones, interacting elegantly with its interior lighting of its architectural surroundings. Light diffuses gently across the curved surfaces, emphasizing the continuous curvature rather than fragmenting it. This indicates a surface modeled with high curvature continuity, likely Class A surfacing in digital terms, where reflections remain coherent across panel junctions. The wheels deserve technical attention. The multi-spoke alloy design appears aerodynamically optimized, with partially enclosed surfaces that reduce drag while maintaining brake cooling channels. The tire profile suggests highway-biased touring rubber rather than off-road capability, reinforcing the vehicle's positioning as a long-distance luxury cruiser rather than a terrain explorer. Ground clearance is moderate, likely supported by adaptive air suspension. Such a system would allow ride height adjustment during highway travel for aerodynamic efficiency and slight elevation during low-speed maneuvering. The rear section continues the sculptural discipline. Rather than a vertical termination common to motorhomes, the rear roofline subtly tapers downward. This tapering logic reduces drag by encouraging clean airflow separation. Rear lighting appears as a continuous horizontal band, a signature approach that visually widens the vehicle and establishes symmetry. Below, the diffuser-like lower structure suggests controlled airflow exit management, preventing underbody turbulence from destabilizing the rear at highway speeds. The roof system is perhaps the most futuristic element. The upper canopy appears reinforced yet transparent, implying laminated structural glass with embedded support ribs. Integrated solar arrays could be layered within opaque roof segments, contributing supplemental energy rather than full propulsion power. Given the likely weight of this structure, internal reinforcement beams would need to be strategically positioned to prevent roof flex during torsional stress. The overall design philosophy leans heavily toward aerospace and marine influence rather than traditional automotive heritage. The layered glazing resembles aircraft observation lounges, while the flowing hull-like lower body evokes superyacht design logic. Segment-wise, this concept does not merely compete within the luxury RV category, it redefines it. Traditional motorhomes prioritize interior volume at the expense of aerodynamic refinement. This concept reverses that compromise, attempting to harmonize habitation space with high-speed stability and sculptural sophistication. The intended user archetype is likely a technologically affluent traveler who values design fluency as much as mobility freedom. Not a weekend camper, but a long-range itinerant executive or creative professional seeking an architectural living space that moves. My first professional impression is that this design exhibits unusual maturity for a speculative concept. It does not rely on visual theatrics or excessive ornamentation. Instead, it communicates confidence through proportion control, surface continuity, and aerodynamic discipline. For a purely fictional design study, it demonstrates an understanding of structural and fluid dynamic principles that many real-world recreational vehicles still struggle to reconcile. Although we are examining only the exterior form, the structural logic provides strong clues about interior organization. Given the extended wheelbase and dual rear axles, I would anticipate a two-deck interior configuration with a central load-bearing spine running longitudinally. This spine would likely house water tanks, battery modules, and structural reinforcement members, keeping mass centralized and low. The main deck ceiling height appears generous, potentially 2.2 meters, supported by the vehicle's substantial vertical envelope. The upper observation level, while visually expansive, would likely prioritize seated lounge functionality rather than full standing clearance across its entirety. Sleeping quarters would logically be positioned toward the rear of the lower deck. This placement would minimize motion sensitivity during travel and capitalize on structural rigidity above the tandem axles. The extensive side glazing presents a challenge for privacy and thermal management. Electrochromic tinting, automated blinds integrated within double-pane glass assemblies, and active acoustic insulation would be essential in real-world execution. The kitchen zone would likely occupy the midsection directly above the primary structural spine. Positioning heavy appliances, induction cooktops, refrigeration modules, and water purification systems over reinforced chassis segments would prevent uneven frame stress. Washroom architecture would need to balance spatial efficiency with structural practicality. A modular wet bath system with water recycling filtration could significantly reduce freshwater dependence during extended travel. Ventilation would require roof-integrated